This clip demonstrates how to design custom financial statements in Priority that provide real-time actionable information on company performance. The Financial Statement Generator gives you the flexibility to customize balance sheets, profit and loss reports, trial balances, and account tree statements. Priority's customized financial statements are made up of two components: a template that determines which report items appear in each row of the statement, and a column bar that determines the report columns to be included in the statement. This separation between report items and columns enables you to mix and match different types of statements and column bars. For instance, you can generate multiple reports based on the same P&L template in combination with a variety of different column bars to view data for different periods. A profit and loss report which displays data using a consolidated yearly column bar, or using a comparative quarterly report, or a statement of operations which displays data by company divisions, for examining the financial performance of different companies that operate in similar fields. Report items for each type of statement are generally created automatically by running the Create Customized Statement program. This program generates a new template for the selected type of statement based on the definitions recorded in one or more of the forms located in the Report Setups menu. In addition, the relevant accounts are attached automatically to each report item based on definitions recorded in the chart of accounts. In the case of an account tree statement, the structure and accounts used in the standard reports are defined in the account tree form. We'll discuss this type of statement in greater detail later on in this video. Once you've ensured that the standard setup of each type of report meets your needs, you can begin creating customized statements. Let's run the Create Customized Statement program and choose the desired report type, in this case, a profit and loss report. You can then choose between a regular report, which combines sums for each report item, and a schedule, which displays the details of each account under each report item, together with the total balance of each item. Finally, assign the report a title. Once you have created a custom report template, it is ready for immediate use. Alternatively, you can use the different sub-levels of the Makeup of Financial Statements form to view or update definitions as desired. For instance, you can use the Items in Statement sub-level form to modify the structure of the report, adding or revising elements such as headings and subheadings, and defining how these elements are organized within the statement. We'll demonstrate the options for defining the statement items using a report we defined in advance: Profit and Loss Detailed. In a custom financial statement, you can include as many lines for subtotals as you need. The different levels of totals and subtotals are defined in the system by assigning each row the appropriate information level in the Items in Statement form. Information levels 1 and 2 are assigned to rows representing headings and subheadings. An information level of 3 represents an individual report item. Level 4 and higher indicates a total or subtotal. Each total or subtotal defined in the report must be assigned one level more than the rows to be totaled. Let's use a profit and loss report to better illustrate this concept. A standard profit and loss report lists the amounts credited to various accounts over the designated period, displaying the sums representing various types of income and corresponding subtotals, followed by a row totaling all income and then adding the total income to the total cost of goods sold in order to attain a sum representing your gross profit. The report then lists any additional expenses representing your organization's operating costs, and finally displays a grand total representing the organization's net profit for the period in question. This hierarchy can be represented in terms of information levels as follows. Each report item is represented in its own line and assigned an information level of 3. After listing any report items representing a given type of income, a corresponding subtotal is inserted by adding a line with an information level of 4. Each level 4 subtotal sums up all preceding report items at level 3, up until the previous level 4 subtotal. This pattern is repeated for each type of income in turn until all income has been listed, at which point we add a line representing the total income and assign it an information level of 5. We then list the report items and corresponding subtotals representing various costs associated with the sold goods, assigning each an information level of either 3 or 4, respectively. The line representing the total cost of goods sold is once again assigned an information level 5. This indicates that the amount in this line is to be calculated by summing up level 4 subtotals, but only up until the previous level 5 subtotal. At this point in the report template, we'll add a line that sums up both the total income and the total cost of goods sold by assigning it an information level of 6. This line then represents your gross profit for the period in question. As you can see, proper use of information levels ensures that you never have to worry about missing an amount somewhere, or getting an incorrect total by picking up an amount more than once. Moreover, the same logic can be used to define additional levels of totals and subtotals by assigning each an information level that is one level higher than the lines to be totaled, up to level 99. In the current example, the final line of the report is assigned an information level of 8. This line is used to calculate the organization's net profit by deducting the total operating expenses from the gross profit. This template can now be used in conjunction with any applicable column bar to generate a P&L statement such as the one we just saw. The use of column bars will be explained shortly. After having defined the structure of the report, including the items, headings, totals and subtotals, let's demonstrate the definition of accounts in the report so that the relevant data will be displayed for each item. We'll be using a trial balance report. To do so, move to the Accounts in Statements sub-level form. Accounts defined in the system are linked to the relevant report items using one of the following: balance sheet P&L item, trial balance item, group of accounts, or individual account numbers. Accounts can be linked to report items automatically or manually. When you run the Create Customized Statement program, accounts are linked to the relevant items automatically, according to the type of statement being built and the statement structure defined in the system at the time. For example, if you build a trial balance statement, the items will be linked to accounts according to the trial balance item defined for each account when you run the program. The second option is to manually create the report and its items, then link the accounts or group of accounts to the items in this form. Since the financial statement generator is used in a multi-company setting, it's important to define the accounts in each company in a similar structure, so that the definitions you record here in one company will apply to the others as well. For example, you should define all your trial balance items in the same way, or decide that all your expense accounts begin with a 6. Let's examine the form closely. Note that accounts are defined here only for lines with an information level of 3, as defined in the parallel items in statement form. The debit item and credit item columns list the lines defined in the parallel form. For example, item 160 here defines the accounts included in line 160 of the parallel form, in this case, main cashier. The item includes all those accounts for which a trial balance item of 100 has been defined. You can combine several account definitions in the same line. For example, you can define a trial balance item together with an account number. Note that you can include an asterisk in these definitions to catch a wider range of accounts or items. For example, you can record 1 asterisk in the account number column to include all the accounts that begin with 1. You can use this form to include an account under different report items than the one they are usually assigned to, and in trial balance reports, add a control line to make sure all your accounts are included, as we'll see in a moment. For example, you can extract an account from the usual group of accounts to which it belongs and assign it to a different group by adding a new line and recording the number of the account and the credit debit item to which it belongs. In the account number column, press F6 to see the definitions of this account in the system. As you can see, the trial balance item of this account is usually 104. Returning to the report definitions, you can see that line 170, to which we link this account, is assigned a trial balance item of 102. When you produce the report, the system will automatically extract this account from item 104 and add it to 102. In a trial balance report, you'll want to make sure all your accounts are included. Therefore, we recommend you add a line at the end which catches any errant accounts. First, let's move back to the items in statement parallel form and add a new line with an information level of 3. We'll call it non-assigned accounts. In the line column, record a number that hasn't been assigned yet to any other line, 9999, and flag the detail column. Back in the accounts in statement form, roll down to the bottom of the list and open a new line. Type an asterisk in the account number column, and under the debit item column, record the new line you just created, 9999. The credit item is filled in automatically with the same number. Since the new line appears at the bottom of the list, the system will automatically exclude all the accounts that were already included in the report, and will display only those accounts that don't appear anywhere else. Let's quickly run the financial statement to see the results. In the message that appears, you can see that for some of the companies, no accounts are included in the control line, meaning the account definitions are correct. Scrolling down to the bottom of the report, you can see that an account appears under non-assigned accounts. Click on it to access the account definitions in priority. You can see that the trial balance item column is defined as 631. By returning to the report definition and retrieving the trial balance item of 631, no result appears, meaning that no item in the statement has been assigned this trial balance item. To include the account in the report, simply add a new line with the trial balance item of 631 and record the relevant definition in the debit item and credit item columns to include it in the statement. When all accounts are defined correctly, the control line in the report should display 0. Having reviewed report templates, let's address the other component used to generate a custom financial statement, the column bar. Column bars determine which column appears in a given custom-made report. A variety of column bars can be defined, one for a monthly report, another for an entire fiscal year, a third for comparing first quarter and second quarter data, and so on. Moreover, you can include percentile columns alongside or in place of sum totals. Let's enter the definition of column bars form to see an example. Quarterly comparison profit and loss is a column bar that compares quarterly data from this year with the previous one and presents the change from one year to the next as a percentage. Note that this column bar is defined as available for general use, ensuring that it is available for any user who runs a report. The columns are defined in the columns in bar sublevel form. We've defined several columns for the first quarter of 2012, one for each company, additional columns for the same quarter in 2011, and a calculated column which displays the difference between them. Each column is assigned both a title, which appears at the top of the report column, and a number, which determines its relative position in the report. Columns appear in ascending order, from left to right. For every column you define, assign a column type, which can be used to display account balances at the beginning or end of a given period, the total value of transactions within a given span of time, or a calculated value or percentage based on the sums in other report columns. Most types of columns, with the exception of calculated or percentage columns, also require you to indicate a date or range of dates for which to display sums in the reports being run. The period start and period end options are used to define columns displaying opening or closing balances respectively, as of or up to a particular date. Together with the period debit and period credit columns, they are usually used in trial balance reports. Period end columns are also suitable for balance sheets. Period totals are usually used in P&L reports. When selecting these column types, make sure you also indicate the start and end dates of the period in the from date and to date columns. Note that you can also specify a different currency for different report columns. This option is useful in consolidated reports of several companies for which different currencies are defined. In such a scenario, you should define one common currency in the report so that the financial data will be comparable. This column bar makes use of the hidden column. In the column bar we designed, we opted to hide the details of the first quarter of 2011 and display only the summary data. The last column presents the change from the first quarter in the previous year to the first quarter this year. In other words, the percentage of difference between the amounts in the two summary columns. This column has been defined as a calculated column, so that you can define mathematical operations performed on the values in other columns. Let's take a closer look at the expression itself. The first calculated column summarized the data of all three companies in the first quarter of 2012, and the second calculated column summarized the same data for 2011. The expressions can incorporate any combination of standard mathematical symbols, integers, and predefined functions such as sum, max, min, and average, alongside references to other columns in the same column bar. Note the hash or number sign, which denotes a reference to the other columns defined in the bar. In the third calculated column, we've defined the following expression: subtraction of the total sum for 2011 from the total sum for 2012, divided by the total sum for 2011, and multiplied by 100, so that the number will appear as a percentage. You can see a detailed explanation on how to define expressions by pressing F1 within the column. Looking back at the report we ran a few minutes ago, using this column bar, you can see how the expression we've just reviewed is reflected in the last column. We've already seen how priority enables you to define a report column that displays data for a specific company in the context of a consolidated financial report. Similarly, if you categorize companies into divisions, you can define a report column for a specific division in order to display data for all companies in that division. For example, in a multinational corporation comprising a number of smaller companies, each company's logistic and financial data are maintained separately in priority. However, when running consolidated statements for the entire corporation, you may not want to display a separate column for each company, but rather display aggregated data for all the companies in each division. In this case, you would create one column for each division. If a new company is acquired at any time, you need only assign it to the relevant division to ensure that financial data for that company is included in the relevant column in any subsequent financial statements. In many companies, it's common practice to maintain a hierarchical account structure or account tree. Let's move to the account tree form to demonstrate. The hierarchical structure is defined as follows. The highest level is defined as a number, as we see with assets. The next level, current assets, is defined as 10, and so includes all accounts beginning with 10. The current assets account is in turn included in assets, and so on. Level 2 is at the same hierarchical level as assets, and is defined as liabilities. In this fashion, we continue adding branches to the tree, from 1 to 6. Expenses. Let's return to the Makeup of Financial Statements form to check the definitions of the report template we've just created. Note that the Totals Above Sums option is flagged for this report, indicating that totals for each group appear above rather than below the list of sums included in the total. In the Items and Statements sublevel form, you can see how the account branches are linked to report items. Take for example line 30, Assets, defined as item 1 ***. Notice the difference in the information level. Here we see that headings in this statement have been assigned an information level of 98 or 99, meaning that the totals appear above the sums, just as we defined in the upper level form. However, the account patterns, which define each report item, are assigned an information level of 3, as in other types of statements. Let's proceed to generate the report with the trial balance account tree column bar. As you can see, the account tree report is organized according to the hierarchical account groupings defined in the account tree form, and the total balance for each group appears above the component sums for each of its subgroups. Finally, note that when working with customized financial statements, you can use the financial statement design form to modify the style used for each level of the report. This concludes our demonstration of Priority's Financial Statement Generator. For additional information, run the Financial Statement Generator wizard.